There are moments in music history that quietly change everything, not with a press conference, not with a lawsuit, but with strategy. Frank Ocean created one of those moments, and most people didn't even realize it when it happened. But to understand how Frank Ocean outsmarted Universal Music Group and Def Jam, you have to understand how he got there in the first place and how the industry underestimated him from the very beginning.
Frank, he's a genius based off the fact that he had a deal and he didn't put out an album in 4 years. And with his deal, he literally figured out how to get 20 million from Lucien Grange, drop his deal, figure out how to make the funds apply to a whole nother album, give him a bullshit album, get out his deal all in one round. Do you know how embarrassed the record industry was? Do you know how hard they've been whipping fucking artists since then? Like, this shit is some real slave shit. Like, you feel me? Like, that man figured out how to finesse the record industry, and people don't talk about that. That it took that man 2 years to do that shit. And then Blonde, he already got a $20 million check from Apple from that shit, and he didn't have to give any of that shit back to the label because he was already out his deal once he gave them Endless.
In 2009, Frank Ocean wasn't Frank Ocean yet. He was a songwriter, a behind-the-scenes creator, and a member of a loose, chaotic, internet-born collective called Odd Future. Odd Future wasn't polished. They weren't industry-friendly, but they were raw, disruptive, and completely outside the traditional label system. That environment gave Frank something most artists never get early on: creative freedom without expectations.
God ain't this fucking bass. And get this camera on my fucking...
It also gave him his first real connections to the movers and shakers inside the music industry. Specifically, it led him to Grammy Award-winning producer Tricky Stewart. And Tricky had the connections and belief in Frank that would lead to his first contract with Def Jam under Universal Music Group. On paper, this should have been his big break. In reality, it became a familiar industry story.
Frank is a little bit of a different story because Frank is a different kind of guy, right? And so I met Frank. My brother, Tab, brought Frank to me. They brought him as a writer, or wanted me to write with him. I looked at him and I said, listen, man, I love what you do. I really, really do. But the only way I would do this is if you would consider being an artist, because I just don't want, with the vocals that I'm hearing at the time, I was like, I don't want to spend the time trying to get people to sound like you. I was like, I'm up to here with that type of energy. And so he's like, yeah, no, I would love to, right? Like that'd be great. Like, and you know, he was a young kid and had just been displaced by Katrina and everything. Now at the time, he had given me and Tab and Mark all these songs that we love, like 5 or 6, maybe 10 songs that we all were like, this guy's incredible. And so he looks at me and he goes, okay, I'll be your artist, but he's like, there's only one thing. I hate every song I've ever written. And I said, well, what does that mean? I was like, these songs are amazing. And that was the birth of Frank Ocean, because at that point he was Lonnie Bro. And when I asked him to be our artist and we signed him, that was I think a transformation for him to go from the songs of what he thought other people liked to writing songs for himself. And that's the Frank Ocean that we enjoy to this day. And I think to me, he's one of the most incredible talents that I've been around. But we didn't end up having like the greatest relationship just because I signed him to a label that wasn't really interested in him being signed. Or they weren't really validating it. And so after we did Nostalgia Ultra and we dropped it, and the whole world came looking for him, and everybody wanted to sign him. Meanwhile, he was signed, and the last people to the table was actually the label that he was signed to. And I think from that standpoint, me bringing him into that situation really caused a wedge in our situation, from the standpoint of, like, I brought a bad partner for him. Not a bad partner for everything else I was doing, but for him, I brought a bad partner to the table, and it was just like, I think he wanted to shed that skin.
Nostalgia Ultra became a cultural moment almost overnight. Critics praised it, fans connected deeply with it, especially with songs like Novocaine and Swim Good put Frank Ocean on the map in a way the label never had. Def Jam didn't plan it, they didn't control it, but they couldn't ignore it. That mixtape forced the industry's hand, and suddenly, Frank Ocean wasn't an unimproved artist anymore. He was a problem, and a good one. With that momentum, Frank was finally given the green light to create his official debut album. In 2012, he released Channel Orange. The album was a masterpiece. It debuted to universal acclaim, won a Grammy, and redefined what R&B could sound like in the modern era. More importantly, it turned Frank Ocean into a prestige artist, someone labels brags about having on their roster. But success also came with a cost, because Channel Orange also locked Frank deeper into the major label system. After its release, Def Jam expected more albums, more product, and more consistency, but Frank Ocean had other plans. After Channel Orange, Frank Ocean disappeared. Years passed, no album, no singles, no traditional updates. From the outside, it looked like a delay. From the inside, it was strategy. Frank was still under contract with Def Jam. Nearly 4 years went by, and during that time, expectations kept building. Fans assumed his next album would be massive. Def Jam assumed it would be valuable. Everyone assumed Frank would play the game the same way again. That assumption was a mistake. August 2016, Frank Ocean finally re-emerged, but not with the album people expected. Instead, he released Endless, a visual album screened exclusively on Apple Music. The project featured Frank silently building a staircase inside a warehouse while his music played in the background. It was abstract, minimal, and unconventional. To many fans, Endless felt strange, almost incomplete, but legally, it was flawless, because Endless fulfilled Frank Ocean's contractual obligation to Def Jam. One album delivered, contract satisfied. Def Jam and Universal Music Group now owned Endless, and that's when Frank Ocean made his real move. Blonde and the Checkmate. Less than 24 hours later, Frank Ocean independently released Blonde. Not through Def Jam, not through Universal Music Group, but on his own terms. Behind the scenes, Frank had already negotiated a secret exclusive deal with Apple Music, reportedly worth around $20 million. As part of that deal, Apple agreed to pay off Frank's remaining $2 million advance owed to Def Jam. Apple didn't just license Blonde, they bought Frank Ocean's independence. Blonde debuted as a fully independent release fully owned by Frank Ocean, with Apple Music receiving an exclusive streaming window. Meanwhile, Def Jam was left holding Endless, the album Frank never intended to be his defining statement, and Blonde became exactly that. #1 debut, critical acclaim, and a generation-defining album. Def Jam had funded years of development, anticipation, and branding, only to watch Frank walk away with the masters. Frank Ocean didn't break the rules, he read them. He exposed the loophole that labels hadn't protected against, the lack of strict definitions around what is qualified as an album. After Blonde, the industry changed. Exclusive album deals began disappearing, contracts tightened, labels rewrote clauses to prevent decoy albums. But the damage was already done. Artists saw what was possible. Frank Ocean proved that ownership is power, patience is leverage, and understanding contracts can matter just as much as talent. He didn't just release an album, he released a blueprint. And once the loophole was exposed, the music industry could never unsee it. But there's one last layer to this story, and it's one most people hesitate to talk about. From the release of Channel Orange in 2012 to Endless in 2016, it took 4 full years for Frank Ocean to escape his contract, reclaim his ownership, and take full control of his career. And then the clock started again. 4 years after Blonde, after the independence, the ownership, the freedom, tragedy struck. In 2020, Frank Ocean's younger brother, Ryan Bro, was killed in a car accident at the age of 18 years old. A devastating, irreversible loss. In the aftermath, many fans noticed something eerie. 4 years to break free from the industry, and 4 years later, an unimaginable personal price. And from that moment on, the conspiracies began. Some people framed it as dark poetry, others as cruel coincidence, and some, more controversially, as another example of a long-standing belief whispered throughout the music industry, that the industry always gets its payment, one way or another.
My brother and I, we came to this festival a lot. And I feel like I was dragged out here half the time because I hated the dust out here. I always left with a respiratory infection or whatever. So I would like avoid coming. I would always end up here. And one of my fondest memories was watching Ray Strummer I don't know what that stage is called, but watching Ray Strummer with my brother and Travis. I don't know if Travis Taco is here, but we were just dancing in that tent to their music, and I know he would have been so excited to be here with all of us, and I want to say thank you for the support and the ears and the love over all this time. And I'm gonna get back to these songs.
Since that loss, Frank has largely retreated from the public eye. No albums, no tours, no industry presence the way there once was. Almost as if the victory came with a cost no contract ever listed. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's human pattern seeking, maybe it's just grief, but the symbolism lingers. Frank Ocean beat the system and then vanished from it. And whether you believe in conspiracy or not, one thing is undeniable. His story forces us to ask a question the industry never wants artists to ask. Was success really worth it? Because sometimes winning the game doesn't mean you escaped untouched. Sometimes it just means you get to walk away, changed forever. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like and let YouTube know you want more. Subscribe, leave a comment, or share with someone you think would enjoy it. It's free and it helps out more than you know. This is the NRG Show. I'm NRG Stove, and as always, until next time, protect your energy.